Hello friends. I can see 90% of my viewers do not subscribe our channel while watching videos. Please hit the subscribe button and like this video. Press that bell icon for notifications. And tell me in the comments from which city you are watching this video. My name is Natalie Voss, and this is the story of how one man's cruelty became the fuel for my greatest triumph. It was a cold November night, the kind where the wind cuts through your uniform like a knife. I was 23 years old, working the late shift at Murphy's Diner, a small, worn-down place just off Highway 95. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. The smell of grease and coffee hung in the air like a permanent cloud. My feet ached in those cheap shoes I could barely afford, but I did not complain. This was honest work. I had been waitressing there for 2 years, long enough to know every regular by name. Long enough to memorize their orders before they even sat down. Mrs. Henderson always wanted her eggs over easy with wheat toast. Tommy from the gas station next door lived on black coffee and apple pie. And Mr. Rodriguez, he always asked for extra hot sauce on everything. These people were not just customers to me. They were my community, my extended family, the ones who made those long, exhausting shifts bearable with their warm smiles and familiar faces. But that night, that November night, everything changed. It started like any other evening. The dinner rush was winding down. Only a handful of tables were occupied. The cook, Jimmy, was already starting to clean the grill. I was refilling sugar dispensers, wiping down counters, doing those endless little tasks that nobody notices but everyone expects. Then he walked in. Table 4. A man in an expensive suit. His shoes probably cost more than I made in a month. He sat down without acknowledging me, scrolling through his phone like the world revolved around him. I approached with my usual smile, the same genuine warmth I gave every customer, regardless of how they treated me. Good evening. Welcome to Murphy's. Can I start you off with something to drink? He barely looked up. Coffee. Black. Simple enough. I returned with the steaming mug. The same ceramic cups we had been using since the 80s. Nothing fancy. Nothing pretentious. Just honest coffee in an honest cup. I set it down gently in front of him. Have you had a chance to look at the menu? Tonight's special is meatloaf with garlic mashed potatoes and I will order when I am ready. His tone was ice cold, dismissive, but I had dealt with difficult customers before. You learn to let it roll off your back in this business. You smile. You stay professional. And you remember that everyone is fighting battles you know nothing about. Maybe he had a bad day. Maybe he was stressed. Maybe he was dealing with something difficult. I gave him space, checked on my other tables, chatted with Mrs. Peterson about her grandchildren, brought Tommy his third cup of coffee, normal waitressing duties. 20 minutes later, I noticed his coffee cup was nearly empty. Without thinking, I walked over with the pot to offer a refill. It was automatic, instinctive, something I had done thousands of times before. But as I leaned in to pour, he jerked his arm. Hot coffee splashed across the table. A few drops hit his sleeve. And that is when the night took a turn towards something I will never, ever forget. What the hell is wrong with you? He barked, loud enough for the entire diner to hear. Every conversation stopped. Every head turned. The whole place went silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of cars on the highway. My face burned with embarrassment. I am so sorry, sir. Let me get you some napkins. Did I ask for more coffee? His voice was sharp, cutting, designed to humiliate. No, sir. I just thought. You thought wrong. He stood up, towering over me, making sure everyone could see this public spectacle. This is exactly the problem with places like this. Incompetent staff who cannot do the simplest tasks without screwing up. I felt the eyes of every person in that diner on me. Mrs. Henderson looked uncomfortable. Tommy was staring at his pie. Even Jimmy had stopped cleaning to watch this unfold. My hands shook as I grabbed napkins from the dispenser. I started dabbing at the spilled coffee, trying to clean up my mistake, trying to make this situation go away. But he was not done with me. Look at yourself, he continued, his voice dripping with disgust. running around with a coffee pot like some kind of servant. Is this really what you want to do with your life? I looked up at him. My eyes were starting to water, but I fought back the tears. I would not give him the satisfaction of seeing me cry. I am sorry about the coffee, sir. Let me get you a fresh cup. Answer the question. He leaned forward, getting closer to my face. What do you even want to do with your life? Or are you just going to be a waitress forever? The words hit me like a physical blow. Just a waitress. Just. As if everything I did, everything I worked for, every dream I carried in my heart, meant nothing. As if serving people was somehow beneath dignity. As if honest work was something to be ashamed of. The worst part was not just what he said. It was how he said it. With such casual cruelty. Such complete disregard for my humanity. Like I was not even a real person with real feelings and real dreams. I stood there, coffee-stained napkins in my trembling hands. Feeling smaller than I had ever felt in my life. I started to speak. But the words would not come. He laughed. Actually laughed. A cold, bitter sound that filled the silent diner. Exactly what I thought, he said, dropping a $5 bill on the wet table. Just a waitress. That is all you will ever be. And with that, he walked out. The bell above the door chimed as it closed behind him. The sound seemed to break the spell that had fallen over the restaurant. Conversation slowly resumed. People tried to pretend they had not just witnessed someone being torn apart in public. But I felt it. The pity. The second-hand embarrassment. The way they looked at me like I was something broken. Mrs. Henderson reached over and squeezed my hand. Do not listen to him, sweetheart. Some people are just mean for no reason. Tommy nodded in agreement. Guy was a complete jerk. You did nothing wrong. Their kindness meant everything to me. But it could not erase what had just happened. It could not take back those words that were now burned into my memory. Just a waitress. I finished my shift in a daze. Went through the motions of cleaning tables, counting tips, closing out the register. But inside, I was reeling. When I finally got home to my tiny studio apartment, I sat on my second-hand couch and let the tears come. All of them. The frustration, the humiliation, the anger, the hurt. But somewhere in that storm of emotion, something else began to grow. Determination. Because here is what that man in the expensive suit did not know about me. Every night after my shift, when I got home exhausted and smelling like fryer oil, I would sit at my small kitchen table with a battered composition notebook. And I would write. Recipes. Ideas. Dreams. My grandmother had taught me to cook when I was little. Not fancy restaurant cooking, but the kind that feeds the soul. The kind that tells a story with every bite. She had passed away when I was 16. But her lessons lived on in my hands, in my heart, in that worn notebook filled with her wisdom. Cooking is love made visible, she used to say. When you cook for someone, you give them a piece of your heart. I had been carrying those words with me ever since. Through every difficult shift. Through every rude customer. Through every moment when I wondered if I was wasting my life. The truth was, I had been saving money. Every tip. Every spare dollar. Building towards something bigger. I wanted to go to culinary school. I wanted to learn from real chefs. I wanted to understand the science behind the art. I wanted to take my grandmother's love and turn it into something that could change lives. But that dream felt so far away. So impossible. Especially on a waitress's salary. Until that night. Until that man's cruelty lit a fire in me that I had not known existed. I opened my notebook. Turned to a fresh page. And I wrote. I am not just a waitress. I am not just anything. I am exactly who I am meant to be. And I will prove it. The next morning, I called the community college. Asked about their culinary program. Part-time classes. Evening schedules that would work around my diner shifts. It would not be easy. Working all day. Then going to school at night. Studying between orders. Practicing knife skills in my tiny kitchen. Until my neighbors complained about the noise. But I did not care about easy anymore. I cared about proving that man wrong. The enrollment process took weeks. Financial aid applications. Placement tests. meeting with advisors who looked at my work history and wondered if I was serious about this career change. The restaurant industry is brutal, one counselor warned me. Long hours, low pay, high stress. Are you sure you want to leave a steady job for something so uncertain? But I was sure. More sure than I had ever been about anything. When classes started in January, I was ready. My schedule became a blur of controlled chaos. Up at 5 in the morning to prep for the breakfast shift at Murphy's. Work until 3 in the afternoon. Rush home for a quick shower and a change of clothes. Then off to school until 10 at night. Basic knife skills. Food safety. Cooking techniques. Restaurant management. Menu planning. Cost control. Every lesson was a revelation. Every technique was a building block towards something greater. My classmates were mostly young kids, fresh out of high school with dreams of celebrity chef stardom. They looked at me strangely at first. The older woman who smelled like diner coffee and had calluses on her hands from years of carrying heavy plates. But I did not let their skepticism bother me. I was not there to make friends. I was there to learn, to grow, to transform. And slowly, they began to respect me, because while they talked about their dreams, I was already working mine into reality. I practiced every technique until it was perfect. I stayed after class to ask questions. I volunteered for extra assignments. I absorbed everything like a sponge. The instructors noticed. Chef Martinez, a stern woman who had worked in some of the best kitchens in the country, pulled me aside one evening. "You have something special," she said. "Raw talent combined with real work ethic. That is rare in this industry." Her words meant more to me than she could have known. After months of being treated like I was invisible, someone finally saw my potential. But the real test came during our practicum, the final project where we had to create a complete meal, from concept to execution, in front of a panel of working chefs. I knew exactly what I wanted to make. My grandmother's recipe for braised short ribs with herbs from her garden. But elevated, refined, turned into something that honored her memory, while showcasing everything I had learned. I spent weeks perfecting every element. The sear on the meat, the depth of the braising liquid, the balance of herbs and aromatics, side dishes that complemented without competing. The night of the presentation, my hands were steady as I worked. All those years of carrying hot plates and managing multiple tables had taught me grace under pressure. The judges tasted in silence, made notes, asked questions about my techniques and inspiration. And then Chef Rodriguez, the head of the program, smiled. "This is restaurant quality work," he said. "You have real potential here." I graduated with honors, top of my class. But more importantly, I graduated with confidence. The scared little waitress who had been humiliated at table 4 was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone who knew her worth. But knowing your worth and proving it to the world are two different things. Getting a job in a real kitchen, that was the next mountain to climb. The restaurant industry is brutal to newcomers, especially newcomers who are not 22 years old with unlimited energy and zero responsibilities. I applied everywhere. Fine dining establishments, casual chains, food trucks, catering companies. Most would not even give me an interview. The ones who did seemed more interested in my age and gender than my skills and determination. "Kitchen work is physically demanding," one chef told me. "Are you sure you can keep up with the pace?" Another was more direct. "We usually hire younger cooks, people who can grow with the restaurant." The rejection stung, but they also fueled me. Finally, after 3 months of searching, I got a chance. Sous chef position at Bellwood, a mid-level restaurant downtown. Not fancy, but respectable. The kind of place where you could learn without the crushing pressure of Michelin expectations. Chef Thompson was gruff but fair. A old-school cook who believed in teaching through trial by fire. "I do not care where you came from," he told me on my first day. "I only care what you can do with a knife and a pan. Prove yourself here, and I will help you get better opportunities." So I proved myself. I arrived early and stayed late. I took every criticism as a lesson. I worked stations that others avoided. I volunteered for the most difficult prep work. My hands got cut. My back ached. I went home every night exhausted and covered in burns. And I loved every minute of it. This was what I was meant to do. Not just the cooking, but the whole ecosystem. The organized chaos of service. The teamwork required to get hundreds of plates out perfectly. The satisfaction of seeing diners enjoy something you created. After 6 months, Chef Thompson promoted me to lead line cook. After a year, he recommended me for a position at Meridian, one of the city's most respected restaurants. The interview at Meridian was intense. Executive Chef Sarah Kim had a reputation for perfectionism. Her kitchen turned out some of the most innovative food in the state. She put me through a series of cooking tests. Basic techniques, knife skills, improvisation with limited ingredients. But the final test was the most revealing. She handed me a simple ingredient. A single potato. "Show me who you are as a cook," she said. "You have 30 minutes. I thought about my grandmother. About her lessons in turning simple ingredients into something magical. About the journey that had brought me to this moment. I made gnocchi. From scratch. Light as air and rich as butter. I served it with brown butter sage sauce and finished it with aged Parmesan. Chef Kim took one bite. Then another. She looked up at me with something I had not seen from many chefs. Respect. "When can you start?" Working at Meridian was like getting a masterclass in fine dining. Every service was an education. Every dish was a work of art. I learned about flavor profiles I had never imagined. Techniques that seemed like magic. Presentation that turned food into visual poetry. But more importantly, I learned about leadership. About running a kitchen. About building a team that could execute at the highest level. 2 years at Meridian taught me everything I needed to know about the business side of restaurants. Cost control. Inventory management. Staff training. Customer service at the highest level. And slowly, an idea began to form. My own restaurant. Not just any restaurant. A place that would honor my grandmother's legacy, while showcasing everything I had learned. A place that would serve food with heart and soul. A place that would prove, once and for all, that I was not just anything. Finding investors was nearly impossible. Banks looked at my limited experience as a business owner and turned me away. Private investors wanted to see proven success before they would risk their money. But I had something they did not expect. A story, a vision, and an unshakable belief in what I was building. I worked 18-hour days. Mornings at Meridian. Afternoons writing business plans and meeting with potential backers. Evenings visiting locations and calculating costs. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Henderson, the regular from Murphy's Diner who had comforted me that terrible night. She had heard through mutual friends about my restaurant plans. Her late husband had left her well provided for, and she believed in investing in dreams. "That young man was wrong about you," she told me over coffee, "and I want to help you prove it." Her investment, combined with a small business loan and every penny of my savings, was enough. I found a location. A cozy space in the Arts District with exposed brick walls and large windows. 12 tables. An open kitchen where diners could watch the magic happen. I named it Juniper and Stone, after the juniper tree in my grandmother's backyard where she taught me to cook, and the stone hearth where we made bread together. The renovation took 4 months. I did as much work as I could myself. Painting, decorating, setting up the kitchen equipment. Every detail mattered. The lighting had to be warm but functional. The acoustics had to allow conversation without being too quiet. The kitchen had to flow efficiently during the chaos of service. But the most important element was the menu. I wanted every dish to tell a story, to connect diners with something deeper than just flavor, to create memories that would last long after the meal ended. My grandmother's braised short ribs became the signature dish. But refined, elevated, served with roasted root vegetables, and a red wine reduction that took hours to perfect. Pan-seared salmon with herb oil and seasonal vegetables. House-made pasta with wild mushroom ragu. A cheese board featuring local artisans. And for dessert, my grandmother's apple tart recipe, but made with butter from a local dairy and apples from an orchard 20 miles away. Every ingredient was sourced with intention. Every technique was executed with precision. Every plate was a love letter to the idea that food can change lives. Opening night was terrifying. What if nobody came? What if the food was not good enough? What if I had been deluding myself about my abilities? But people did come. Friends. Former colleagues. Food lovers who had heard whispers about this new place with the passionate chef. And they stayed. They tasted. They smiled. More importantly, they came back. Word spread slowly at first. Then faster. Food bloggers discovered us. Local newspapers wrote reviews. Social media posts showed beautiful plates and talked about the warm atmosphere. Within 6 months, we were booked solid most nights. Within a year, we had a waiting list. The first major review came from the city's most respected food critic. I was terrified to read it. Good reviews could make a restaurant. Bad ones could destroy everything. But when I opened the newspaper that morning, I could barely believe what I was seeing. 4 stars. Juniper and Stone represents everything right about contemporary American cuisine. The review began. Chef Voss has created something special here. Food that comforts while challenging. Service that feels both professional and personal. An atmosphere that makes every diner feel like a welcomed guest. The review went on to praise specific dishes. The transcendent short ribs. The perfectly executed salmon. The desserts that end every meal on a note of pure joy. But the closing paragraph was what made me cry happy tears in my office. This is a restaurant with soul. You can taste the passion in every bite. You can feel the love in every detail. Chef Voss has created more than just a dining establishment. She has created a place where food becomes memory. The success was overwhelming. Reservations booked weeks in advance. Job applications from talented cooks who wanted to be part of something special. Opportunities to cater high-profile events. But the real validation came from my peers. Other chefs started visiting. Respected names in the industry who had heard about this little restaurant that was making waves. They came expecting good food. They left talking about excellence. Chef Kim from Meridian brought her entire leadership team for dinner. Afterward, she pulled me aside. "You did not just open a restaurant," she said. "You created something that will change how people think about food in this city." The recognition kept building. Local food awards. Regional magazine features. Television appearances on cooking shows. And then, the call that changed everything. It was a Tuesday morning in March. I was in the kitchen, going over prep lists with my team, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost sent it to voicemail. But something made me answer. "Is this Natalie Voss, chef and owner of Juniper and Stone?" The voice was professional. Official. I could hear the excitement barely contained beneath the formal tone. "Yes, this is Natalie. This is Jennifer Walsh from the James Beard Foundation. I am calling to inform you that you have been nominated for Outstanding Chef in the Mid-Atlantic region." The phone almost slipped from my hands. The James Beard Awards. The Oscars of the food world. The highest honor a chef could receive. I had dreamed of this moment, but never truly believed it could happen. Are you sure?" I stammered. Jennifer laughed. "Very sure. The nomination committee was unanimous. Your work at Juniper and Stone represents exactly the kind of excellence we celebrate." The nomination alone was incredible. But 3 months later, came news that still gives me chills. I had won. The award ceremony was in New York City, Lincoln Center. A black tie event with the biggest names in American cuisine. I bought a dress. The most expensive thing I had ever owned. Deep blue silk that made me feel elegant and confident. The day of the ceremony, I was a bundle of nerves. This felt surreal. Like a dream I might wake up from at any moment. But it was real. When they called my name. When I walked across that stage. When I held that heavy metal in my trembling hands. I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The scared young waitress who had been humiliated in front of a diner full of people. The student who had worked 18-hour days to pay for culinary school. The cook who had been rejected by dozens of restaurants. The entrepreneur who had risked everything on a dream. All of those versions of me had led to this moment. The cameras flashed. The audience applauded. Fellow chefs. People I had admired from afar stood up to honor my achievement. But in that moment of triumph, I thought about one person in particular. The man from table 4. The one who had called me just a waitress. The one whose cruelty had accidentally become the catalyst for everything I had accomplished. I wondered what he would think if he could see me now. 6 months later, I found out. It was a busy Saturday night at Juniper and Stone. The dining room was full. The kitchen was humming with controlled chaos. Everything was running perfectly. Our hostess approached me during a brief lull in service. "Chef Voss, there is a gentleman at table 4 who would like to speak with you. He says he is a longtime admirer of your work." Table 4. The same number as that night at Murphy's Diner. The coincidence sent a chill down my spine. I walked into the dining room, wiping my hands on my apron, prepared to meet another fan or food industry professional. And there he was. Older now, grayer, but unmistakably the same man who had torn me apart with his words all those years ago. He looked up from his dessert, my grandmother's apple tart, and his face went pale. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The recognition was mutual and immediate. "Chef Voss," he said finally. His voice was quieter now, less arrogant. "I was hoping to compliment you on an extraordinary meal." I smiled. The same genuine smile I had given him that night at the diner. The same warmth I offered every guest. "Thank you. I am so glad you enjoyed everything. That dessert is made from my grandmother's recipe." He nodded slowly. I could see him processing the situation, trying to reconcile the woman standing before him with the waitress he had dismissed so cruelly. "I read about your James Beard Award," he continued. "Quite an achievement. You should be very proud." "I am," I replied simply. There was so much more I could have said. So many ways I could have made him uncomfortable, reminded him of his cruelty, made him feel small the way he had made me feel. But I chose grace instead. Because here is what I had learned in all those years of struggle and growth. Success is not about proving other people wrong. It is about proving yourself right. I was not standing there as his victim anymore. I was there as his equal, as someone who had turned his moment of cruelty into fuel for something beautiful. "Would you like me to send over some chocolates with our compliments?" I asked. "For such a special guest?" He looked confused. "Special guest. Anyone who appreciates good food is special here. That is what we believe at Juniper and Stone." I turned to walk back to the kitchen, but his voice stopped me. "Chef Voss." I looked back. He struggled with the words. "I owe you an apology for something that happened a long time ago. I was not kind to you once, and I have regretted it ever since." For a moment, I was 23 again, standing in that diner with coffee-stained napkins in my hands, feeling small and worthless and defeated. But only for a moment. "Apology accepted," I said. "We all have moments we are not proud of. The important thing is learning from them." I meant it, because holding on to that anger, that hurt, would have poisoned everything I had built, would have turned my success bitter instead of sweet. He nodded. "Thank you for saying that. And thank you for this." He gestured around the restaurant. "You have created something truly special here." "Yes," I agreed. "I have." And with that, I returned to my kitchen, to my team, to the work that filled my soul. Later that night, after service was over, after the last guest had left, I stood alone in my restaurant. The dining room was quiet now, chairs stacked on tables, floors swept clean, everything ready for tomorrow's service. But I could still feel the energy that had filled this space hours before. The laughter, the conversation, the joy that comes from sharing a perfect meal with people you care about. I thought about that scared young woman who had once believed she was just a waitress, who had let someone else's cruelty define her worth. She had been wrong about so many things, but she had been right about one thing that mattered more than all the rest. She had refused to stay broken. Every dream begins with a single moment of believing it is possible. Every success starts with someone deciding they deserve better. My journey from that diner to this kitchen was not just about cooking. It was about refusing to accept someone else's limitations on my life. It was about turning pain into purpose, humiliation into motivation, doubt into determination. The man at table 4 thought he was putting me in my place that night. What he actually did was help me find my place. The place I was always meant to be. Standing in a kitchen I built. Cooking food that brings joy. Leading a team that shares my passion. Creating experiences that become memories. I am not just anything. I am exactly who I was meant to be. And that is the sweetest revenge of all. Because success tastes better than bitterness ever could. The end. If this story inspired you to never give up on your dreams, please subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories of triumph over adversity. Your support means everything to us, and together we can share more amazing journeys of people who refuse to let others define their worth. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, so you never miss a story that might change your life.